Słuchajcie, zaczniemy chwilę później, dobrze? Nasi telewidzowie są już na miejscu, natomiast żeby ich nie trzymać, to zaczniemy transmisję. Tak, jesteśmy tutaj. Natomiast powoli sobie się ogarniajcie, siadajmy. Te wykwintne miejsce jest wynajęte na sekundy, nie więc byśmy mogli puścić do... Ja żartuję, możemy sobie siedzieć jeszcze chwilkę. Natomiast gdzieś tam powoli się już zbierajmy. Pierwszy, dobrze, może być pierwszy. A, nie masz tego już slajdu.
Znaczy mam, sobie wybrałam, ale
Dobrze.
jeszcze nie mam pytań. No mogę wrzucić.
Czego był, żeby sobie ludzie zostawili. No proszę cię, bo większość ja się powiem, ale dzieci nie stres. Czyli lożę 4. Dobrze, lożę 4. Wojtuś, a gdzie siadasz w loży 4? A, to jest lożę 4.
Myślałem, że to twoje.
Ja mam trzymać jakieś Przecież on świetnie gada, odwracacie się na fotelu. Znając nasze podejście, zawsze miały to stwierdzenie. Nie było. Po co miało być? Dobrze. Jak tam, moi drodzy? Zbieramy się powoli. How are everybody? We starting slowly? Okay, perfect. No możesz po polsku. Zapytamy, jaki jest to. Raczej po angielsku jest. Raczej. Nie, nawet nie tak samo. Cały czas nie ma żadnego sensu. Zygmuś, dzwon. No co, którą mamy? No, myślę, że jeszcze się ładowanie. Słuchajcie, opóźnienie wynika z tego, że my tu mamy pizzę, browary, no i nie jest źle. No i generalnie z tego powodu warto by było to przyłączyć się następnym razem, więc kto jest online może dołączyć, są pewne zalety bycia online. No. Dlatego mamy zazwyczaj chwilę spóźnienia, tu jest pizza, jest gorąca, tu jest zimna. A, bo zimna, nie? A, no nie, to też jest różne Coca-Cola albo koło podobne napoje. Po prostu nie wiem, polską bardzo zwierzęce. Słyszę, że cisza zapada powoli. Dobra, to pierwszy dzwonek, ale nie będę dzwonił, bo Zygmunt zajęty jest. Słuchajcie, witam Was w tych skromnych progach tym razem. Wiadomo, lokalizacja wcale nie ma znaczenia, ale w tym akurat konkretnym przypadku znaczenie ma. Ponad 1000 lat historii, kultury Polski, czyli historia głęboka, połączona z najnowszą technologią. Słuchajcie, jeżeli możecie, opowiedzcie o tym, gdzie się spotykamy, jak wygląda ten event na social media, żeby też się to rozniosło po świecie, żebyśmy mieli jakichś fajnych, nowych ludzi, którzy do nas dołączają. Mam nadzieję, że dzisiejsze spotkanie będzie dla Was dobre. I to by był chyba koniec słów po polsku, więc po prostu postanowię się przyłączyć na angielski, dlatego że mamy sporo materiału raczej w języku angielskim. So everybody, hello, we are at the Royal Castle Babel. I think this spot is quite interesting for everybody, so this is our first time here. We're waiting for your feedback if you want here to be organized this event. My name is Maciej Melusz. I'm a co-leader of AWS User Group Krakow. Together with Maria, we organized this event today, and hopefully you will enjoy it. First, from our beloved and hated in the same moment vendor, AWS. We love him. 29 days of the month, and this only one day, there's a little bit of, unsureness with the investment. So you have a very problematic moment. What you will talk about?
Okay. Hi guys. Hello guys. Hello everybody.
Yeah, I'm Wojciech Szczepucha. I'm solutions architect from AWS. Yeah, I also got invoices every month.
Yeah.
Today's topic is about building a compliant and secure organization using AWS Control Tower. So, first question to you before we start: who has an AWS account or work on such?
Sorry, come again, please.
AWS account. Who has it?
Account.
Account. AWS account. Okay. What about more than one account? Okay. So let me start with the common point, which is common starting point, which is one AWS account. We will be talking about accounts and users, but in a later stage. So when we speak to our customers, they often have at least one account. Sometimes they don't have even one account and they start their journey through the cloud. But when they have at least one account, they have one team, and this is very good situation. They are having something that is working fine without any troubles, maybe. But when another teams come into place and another applications are placed on the AWS account, it's starting to be more complicated. Why? As you can see, there are different colors. There are 3 teams, 3 applications, 3 services, maybe more services. But each of them are configured and maintained by different teams. And this starts to be a bit of messy configuration, because you have complex IAM policies, which means that you are configuring access to your environments to multiple people, maybe teams. You have limits on each account. AWS account has its own limits. And if you put many applications, many services, many teams, you might be reaching those limits. And at some point, your infrastructure might not grow enough because of those limits, and you need to raise them. But this is the situation that happens maybe not too often, but it happens. Another thing is harder to understand the billing. Maciej mentioned that we have an invoice at the end of the month. So how does it work when you want to know which application, which team pays which part of the invoice, and how to work with that? And we find that many of those, let's say, maybe customers are finding another way to split those environments. So they are using, for example, one account for the production, other accounts for the development, for the staging, other resources are placed in different accounts, but at the same time, they're allowing multiple teams, again, working in the same, let's say, under umbrella of one account. And this is, again, a problematic thing. Why? Because it starts to be complicated. I mean, who has access to what? One team might get access to one application, but if they fail to, let's say, split those permissions, they can step on each other's foot, because they can, for example, disable some of the services which doesn't do. Again, exhaustion of the limits happens also from time to time. And let me talk about some kind of anti-patterns. So all those services are placed within different, for example, VPCs, and we have different teams working on different VPCs, which means the virtual private cloud, which stands for the network environment. And they're placing different solutions, different applications, for example, on different VPCs. They're splitting all those environments. At the same time, are giving access to different teams to access their environments. And as you can see, this is blurry. You cannot even read that in a good manner. So it's an anti-pattern. It doesn't follow the best practices of how we should create our solutions in AWS by using accounts. Another anti-pattern the security boundaries. So I mentioned that you can give to your team, to the other team, some permissions. And what does it mean? When you create an IAM policy, you are attaching this policy to one or the other person, or maybe a group of people. And maybe your roles are having the same policies that are attached to another role that is attached to another team's environment. And again, this is blurry because, for example, when you have, let's say, EC2 instance, compute on AWS, and you are giving this compute power, this EC2 instance, and access to S3 buckets, so to the storage. And one team is using this to access S3 buckets, but not all S3 buckets. So another team wants to have the same kind of the policy, but access different S3 buckets. And what happens next? They are trying to update the same policy, so to give permissions to different teams, access to different buckets. And at the same time, two teams have access to different buckets that they shouldn't have to. So what is the best practice? To create multiple accounts. And multiple accounts, but not with multiple teams working on the same accounts, but having accounts per team basis. For example, analytic team and database team might have access to one account, but security auditor and DevOps team should have access to another account. And they shouldn't be interfering each other. So this is one of the things why we are going to discuss AWS Control Tower. So let me summarize a bit. We have something which is called AWS account, a security boundary for your applications, services that gives you a way to separate billing and to avoid throttling and limits if you are working with multiple applications at the same time. So it gives you kind of a flexibility to give access, to build new environments and get rid of those environments if they're no longer needed. And how to manage such environments if you have multiple accounts. For example, you have 5, 10, it's maybe okay to manage this by yourself. But what if you have tens or hundreds of accounts? I've seen this situation. For that, there is a well-designed and automated service which is called AWS Control Tower. We recommend to use it when you have a small organization, small company, or you have a huge organization, you want to have everything is provisioning and you have accounts, giving permissions to some teams, maybe creating some boundaries, compliant policies, and so on and so forth. So this is something that you can even include into the existing environment, but with some, let's say, precautions. Control Tower takes care also for all the best practices of creating environments following best practices. And it gives you a managed service, which means that you don't have to provision your own CI/CD pipelines and so on and so forth. You don't have to write a code to create an automation for your AWS organization, which is an umbrella for all the management of your underlying accounts. And it's an updated service, so you don't have to, let's say, update to the new API calls that you might want to use to have your infrastructure up and running, because we do it for you. I mentioned that there is an automated account, which means that you can create an account by giving your teams an access to tools that will create an account for you. So they don't have to, let's say, ask for creating an account. You can create a boundary, you can create, let's say, blueprints of your new accounts for the teams and giving them permissions with the, let's say, pre-configured environment in it. And of course, one of quite, let's say, something that is really important, to have an information, a single pane of glass that gives you an observability of all the created accounts, if they are compliant or not. We'll be talking about the compliance in a second. So again, the benefits, you can have an automated landing zone, which means that you can have multi-account strategy for your company, for your organization in an automated way. You can have an account factory that will create an account with the pre-configured services, or just a simple account, or with configured say PCs, some services maybe on it, enable logging to the right buckets, and giving you a lot of features that you can implement with one click for the teams. Another thing is the built-in IAM management, which means that you can have the single pane of glass for the organization in terms of the accounts, but at the same time you can have a single place which will use your identity provider, or you can create in it user accounts. So there is one place of storing users, not accounts, but users for your whole environment, for your whole infrastructure from AWS side. And the use cases, if you have many teams, if there is a, let's say, a process in your organization that you have to follow to create resources, this can help you with creation of your infrastructure. Also the billing, why it simplifies the billing? Because AWS organization, which AWS Control Tower creates for you, have its capability of splitting the billing, but having the one invoice in it. And of course, isolation and security. So you can create well-designed permissions for each of the members of your teams, of your applications, and you can deploy it through it. So how does it look? When you start with AWS Control Tower, there is a set of the pre-configured scripts, which are the CloudFormation stack sets, which contains all the settings which follow the best practices. It creates a service catalog that gives you an option to create blueprints for your organization that will create the services that I mentioned before. Of course, it creates an organization, which is an umbrella, umbrella for your all AWS accounts, and creates an IAM identity center, which have all the settings for your users, which will gain an access to your again underlying AWS accounts. Of course, it creates some other let's say settings, like creates a local archive account which contains all the CloudTrail logs, which is used to store all the API calls which you or your services are doing to the AWS, just to save them in the secure place so nobody get access to it and nobody can overwrite it.
One question. It says from all your accounts, for example, if you have C environment like Dev Stage Pro.
Yes, exactly.
So to one account, right?
Yes, it stores, it takes from all the accounts, it takes the CloudTrail logs to one particular place and disables access to anyone to get access to this particular account. You can of course change it later and give them access to the right people, but normally it stores all the logs into one account. And the best practice is to create actually the on all of your AWS accounts a way to store logs to this account. So the audit account will gain access to those logs in the read-only manner. So nobody will be able to overwrite those logs. And at this point, you can do the audit for your infrastructure, for your AWS environment. So you know what happened, for example, and do the postmortem. And of course, other accounts can be provisioned. And with just an account baseline, with the network baseline, in a simple way. But today's topic is about, sorry, not this way. Today's topic is about following the compliance. So compliance needs guardrails, kind of controls. And we can find three types of controls. First is the preventive control, which is always compliant. How does it work? AWS organization has something that is called service control policies, which are on top of every account which is under AWS organization. And through those service control policies, you can say, you can use this region only, you can use this EC2 type instance type, you can use this RDS instance type, and so on and so forth. And nobody will be able to create other resources. Another type is detective or remediable controls. It uses AWS config, which checks all the time, if you enable, of course, these policies for the AWS config, if this or that service is compliant with the settings that you have created. So the services can be compliant or non-compliant. And it checks, of course, across all the accounts that you have enabled or created. And the last one, proactive control. This works actually only with AWS CloudFormation, but it's always compliant also, because it through the hooks that are attached to the AWS CloudFormation, it gives you a way to prevent from creating resources that are not compliant with your setup. So you can create kind of checks before creating anything with the CloudFormation, so it will prevent this from happening. For example, if somebody wants to create, using your CloudFormation, they want to create a bunch of EC2 instances to, I don't know, maybe do a Bitcoin mining, and you can prevent it because you're not going to create more than, I don't know, 2 instances, right? So this is something that works this way. So I mentioned that there is a CloudFormation hook, which checks the CloudFormation script and provides you a way to create infrastructure or prevent it. And it, of course, it's managed by the Control Tower. So there are some common control objectives that you can find, and you will see those categories. You can use them. There are a lot of controls underneath. They are pre-configured, so you don't have to write them by yourself. And you can, of course, check each of the controls that we are giving to you. And you can check what it will do. And through the artifacts, you can check how does it work, because there is a straight code that is used to enable this control. So let's go to the demo. This is something that is called IAM Identity Center. This is the, I don't know, let's start it. Check. No. So this is the front line to getting access to the AWS environment through the IAM Identity Center. Of course, when you log into it, you will gain access to the accounts that are created by Control Tower. Of course, this service can be used without Control Tower, which I recommend to do so, because it can, for example, use your existing identity provider. And as you can see, there are different permissions to particular accounts. So you can use one of them. And you can go to the management console, for example, just by clicking to this particular button. And what we can see, there is a Control Tower. And this is the single pane of glass that I mentioned. So it's creating the control tower. Control tower creates an organization. It creates organization units, some pre-configured accounts. As I mentioned, there is a security with a lower archive and audit account. Organization units are just, let's say, buckets for folders for having structured configuration of your accounts. For example, you can create one organization unit for security, one for the sandbox accounts, one for the production. And based on the organization units, you can create, for example, boundaries that will not allow changes to different environments. What we can see here, as you can see, there are different categories and groups of managed controls that are pre-configured for you. You can search them by services or by the free frameworks. For example, PCI DSS or CIS AWS benchmark. It's always updated. When the new benchmark will arise, you will see this also here. Of course, user and access. So this is the console for creating and configuring identity center. And there is a landing zone settings, which means that you can use the latest updated version of the pre-configured landing zone. Landing zone means that this is the set of configurations for creating multi-account strategy. You can enable or disable different regions, and let's say your company works only in the EU region and you want to let's say European Union, and you want to have the regions that are within this European Union. So you can enable them, and by that you will create a boundary for all the resources, so they cannot be created elsewhere. And as you can see, there are a lot of different settings. So let's pick up some controls and enable them. Let's start with the behavioral and detective. For this service, you can select from the list. Let's find S3. And for the S3, we want to see if there is a versioning enabled. So as you can see, it checks whether the versioning for the S3 packets is enabled. You can check the artifacts. As you can see, there is a full rule for the AWS config. You can use this for your own or just deploy it by enabling this control here. And you can do it for organization unit. So let's enable it. As you can see, several minutes to take an effect. What it does is just creates a cloud formation stack within the selected accounts which are under the organization unit. So you can see that on this organization unit there are enabled enabled controls. So to check if it's working fine, we'll go to the cloud formation. And through the strat sets, you can find this S3 version enabled control. And there is information to which account it was deployed. I would be clicking a lot faster, but due to the sake of demo, it's better to record it.
Come
No?
It's always funny.
Yeah, fixing the production. Yeah. So you can see that on the account level to which it was deployed, there is a CloudFormation stack, not stack set. and it creates AWS config rule. So we'll go to the config to see if it's working fine. Yeah, going to the rules, there is a protective rule. If you go into it, by the way, through that, what you see, you can configure and see how the services work. So you can use them without AWS Control Tower, but use them for your own purpose, just by going to particular services and create them. Of course, we'll fail here because there are a lot of sandbox versioning test accounts. They're not allowed to have the same names for the bucket name, so we need to change it. Somebody has created already this kind. And this bucket was created without versioning enabled. So. I should record it again, a bit faster.
Don't worry. You should do it, you know, like.
Why? Really? So yeah, let's get back to the AWS console. Sorry that I'm turning back to you, but it's bigger than my screen. Okay. And as you can see, we have reached the non-compliant because this concrete bucket was created without versioning enabled. So if you have, for example, some your own company rules that you don't allow to create some of the resources, like, oh, for example, for EC2 instance or for your load balancer, you don't allow to access certain reports, you can create AWS config rule. And through this config rule, you can say, okay, we are not allowing that. So check for all the services if there is a security group that contains such configuration. If we find, as you can see in the control tower, you also see that this particular control has raised a problem, that there is a non-compliant resource. And getting back to what I was saying, that if you have some kind of regulations, some compliance requirements, you can create your own rules and be notified when they are non-compliant. So another type of the control, preventive. So disallow changes to encryption. For the S3 buckets, and there is a concrete service control policy rule that will disallow that. Again, to the sandbox organization unit, it's enabled, and we can check it by going to the controls library. Yeah, it was unfortunately recorded twice. So again, sorry. Yeah, too much silence. Again, enabled. You don't have to do it twice, believe me.
Just in case.
Just in case. So yeah, it's enabled, and you will find it here. Again, when you go to the AWS organizations, which can be found here, you can go to the policies for the sandbox organization unit, and you will find the guardrails and how does it work when the control tower creates some guardrail because you have selected this? As you can see, there are a bunch of them because it creates some kind of guardrails which we say that are mandatory, and it actually adds another boundaries to the end of this file. So we can check this, create like buttons and different names. This time it will be and as you can see, there is simple settings, and you need to have an encryption created in the right format. So you don't have permission to edit default encryption, and default encryption is changed. Again, how you can check this, that this particular guardrail taking place. So by checking the cloud trail, and you have access for the logs. So if you have a trail, these logs will be sent to the S3 bucket, but you can also see the current history, which have 90 days of history of your account. So you can check what happened within your account in terms of creating, in terms of changes that are going through the API calls to your particular account by going to the cloud trail history. And the 90 days is for free. The first trail in cloud trail is also for free, but if you store something on the S3 bucket, you are paying for the data, so it will grow. Sorry, it will grow through the time. Another way to create is by going to the frameworks. So you can, let's say, trim the required controls by selecting the frameworks. So you can select that, for example, you want to create a secure socket layer for all the requests that are coming to your S3 buckets. And as you can see, there is a guard rule, which will create the hook that I mentioned before. And there are some scenarios when it will fail, when it will pass. As you can see, there is a secure transport is false. So, non-compliant example. So this is the template that you can use to check it. Allow and the secure transport is false, so it will be non-compliant, and the compliant one will be with the secure. As you can see, there is a deny for the secure false. So something that you can check by yourself. And this is the actually last example. So we have enabled the control. To create something like this, you would have to spend a lot of time, days, many days, and if something is changed in terms of the API calls, as you can see, there is a hook created. You will need to go back to your infrastructure and update it to the newest version, and this is done for you through the control tower. That's why, as you can see, there is there is a hook. So if we try to create a resource without the right, as you can see, there are two handlers for the pre-create, pre-update, which means that even if you try to create something that will fail because it's not following the rules that you have created, but if you want to update it, it still will fail because you have some hooks, some changes that are prevented from happening because of this particular requirements. So it's gonna fail. Again, when you create resources, it will, of course, give you an option to see if and why it failed. So there is the hook that prevented from happening the creation of the process of the resources. So I mentioned that you can create accounts and you can create your own setup for those accounts by giving some resources that will be pre-configured and deployed to your account, and this can be done through the account factory customization. So you can use the existing account workflow, you can use existing partner blueprints, and you can use the existing blueprints or create your own. What does it mean create your own? It means that you have to create your own set of rules through the, for example, lambdas that will be attached to the full pipeline of the account creation. And as you can see, there are solutions that you can go through. There is a CI/CD pipeline that can extend the account factory. And of course, it's synced through the CloudFormation. So overall, it means that you can include your own configurations to the existing account factory. And for those who love Terraform, there is also a way to create it through the Terraform. This is account factory for the Terraform. Just to summarize, we have an existing control tower. Actually, the full process of creating a new account and deploying control tower takes an hour. It's under an hour. It will create the management account, log archive, and audit account, and all the configurations which are necessary to run all the environment. It will create an account vending. It will centralize your logging. And of course, a AWS Identity Center will be also configured. And we are providing through the docs, through the documentation, how to configure your own IDP. For example, you might have Active Directory, you might have Google, what else? Actually, different type of identity providers. And key takeaways: you can set up and govern your multi-account AWS environment through the control tower. There is no additional charge. You are paying for the resources underneath. For example, we have a workshop that you can use to create. We're providing you step-by-step actions, and I've checked. It costed me $8 per month, without enabling different guardrails, just a simple account. But of course, it will grow through the time because of the storage of the logs. And of course, comprehensive control management. You can enable disable controls for your accounts. And as I mentioned, the account factory. So where you can find information about it, there is a workshop that I've mentioned. You can check it and create a control tower by yourself. There are control tower documentation files that you can check for the how to progress, how to enable it, and how to follow the best practices when creating a control tower. And that's it. This is how you can contact me. Of course, I will be there to answer the questions. And of course, we have quiz time. Right?
Quiz time. Do you have any questions? Yeah, question.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Related with the product to this one. So, of course, I don't want to keep it. And I needed to create all the organization, landing zone, everything. And you have AWS landing accelerator.
Yeah.
And I have a question about this. How popular this solution is, because it's fully supported through AWS. And the question to this landing zone accelerator, when you deploy the landing zone accelerator, I want to have everything in code, so to make it everything, not only I can't factor everything into the storage, for example. So there's a code commit inside this solution. And code commit inside this AWS landing zone accelerator. So the question is, do you know maybe what is the future about code commit, because it was complicated?
Actually, the accelerator is okay. It's used for certain solutions, for certain situations. It's not something that we say that we should be using this on a daily basis. For normal usage, there is a control tower, but for specific use cases, there is a accelerator, and this is mostly used for the highly regulated environments. And this is why it was created, but it's not something that we recommend at the first step. We need to understand why you want to use the accelerator, landing zone accelerator, and if you need more answers, we can connect each other in the emails or talks maybe, and discuss it. Because this is not something that we say that you should go with this one. This is for a very specific use cases.
Yeah. Like stand up,
Yeah. What if I already have an organization or config that's involved that stuff, and I can integrate this to Control Tower, or is it too late or not even ready?
Okay, this is not so straightforward. You can have your organization, but we do not recommend to enable Control Tower on the existing environments, which means that you can do it on the side if you see that it gives you more benefits for your business and will be more valuable, for example. And how to work with that? You are creating a new organization through the Control Tower, and you can, let's say, rejoin these existing accounts to the Control Tower. This should be done with the precautious. You need to be very cautious in terms of applied boundaries, applied settings, and so on and so forth. With that, we can help you because it's something that you should be aware that if you have some, for example, SCPs enabled on your organization, they will not work the same because you have to enable them on the Control Tower, on the new organization. They are not copied. So, yeah, this is possible, but it's not recommended to create a Control Tower on the existing organization. But you can disjoin the account from the existing organization and join it to the new created by the Control Tower. So it is possible. I've done it this year with one of the customers.
Cool. Any other questions? I have a question.
Yeah.
I love it. When you have already configured organization and you apply those rules, does it show you that something is uncompliant or just delete it? How it works? Because maybe I missed that from your presentation, but I'm really curious. You have already something in your tenant, right, in your organization.
Yeah.
You create the rule, you apply the rule, and it appears that 50% of the infrastructure is wrong.
Yeah.
What's going to happen?
With the non-compliant?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is going to happen if you don't have an automation created for it. You can create an automation that will resolve the problem, if it's a problem, or it's something that you need to go through, depends on the
but there's going to be some kind of report that this, and that, it's not compliant?
Depends on your needs.
Correct.
By default, it's not, but you can create the notifications. So you can send, for example, an email that will give you information about it.
Mm-hmm. So in this situations, it can happen that I will get, like, or log file with this information, emails, or any way I want to create that report, but I will get the information that it will kind of scan my environment, right?
Yeah, it's actually the AWS config, because we are talking about the AWS config. It's scanning your environment continuously.
Okay.
So if something has changed to your environment, it will notify you that there is a change. And something that I love about the AWS config is that it gives you a full history of the particular service. So you can go through it and see on the timeline who changed what and to what.
So just to be perfect, sure, right? I create this rule, nothing happening, and because it was created in the past before the rule. From the experience that I had with those systems, they are usually check the resources during the creation. So you're saying that this control tower creating during the creation, right? You try to create something that is violating rules. It's not allow you, obviously, right? But as well, do the discovery phase on your organization and telling you like, hey, buddy, it's very bad.
Okay, got your point. If you are not, for the detective controls, if you are not checking the all organization with all rules, it will not bring up the information that something already is violating your rules.
Exactly.
But if you're configuring the exact configs because you want to check it,
the new one,
you will get to
okay, so it's like, it's not doing the discovery phase. You need to force it to do the discovery phase. All right, cool. Thank you very much. Any questions pop up? Meantime? No? Thank you very much. So we have a quiz. As usual, you scan the code, there is a Bitcoin wallet, and you send all your money there, okay? That's part of the plan, okay? But beside the Bitcoin wallet, there is as well some kind of questions that you should or could reply. If you get the best results, right? We will pick up the winners, and the winners will get vouchers for AWS services. So you need to be careful, like listen what the people are saying. There is not such questions like on your maturity exam that you never heard about. It's something that happened here over the last 1 hour or hopefully 2 hours. Do we need a break for a moment before you prepare? So, hey, just refresh yourself, okay? Don't go very far. There is people with the guns that will shoot you, okay? If you will try to take out any paintings, okay? So don't worry. Just, like no pressure. And we will be back in like 5 minutes and just connect the new one.
Możesz usunąć?
Pytania są na slajdzie, a quizy możliwe odpowiedzenia na PC.
Wszystkie 3 pytania są na slajdzie.
Gdzie są te
To samego pytania, to bez sensu zrobić.
Down, grab some beer, grab some pizza, and the guys are waiting. And the time is ticking, you know, every second 2 ounces of gold.
And they close the gates.
And they close the gates and kill everybody. No, they let the dragon out. Let the dragon out.
Moich prezentacji.
A, przy prezentacji widać, że tak, wszyscy mówią. Right.
You do the icebreaker? The icebreaker is in the glass.
All right, so I don't know how many years, a couple years at least, like 3 or 4, I don't know, like everlasting supporter of our group, AWS community, group KRK, Philip Morris International, and their IT hub. We present today a little bit about
cool stuff in architecture, basically.
The stage is yours. I do so as a breaker.
So hello everyone. We are architects from Philip Morris International, the tobacco company. Maybe you've heard about us, but we'll tell you the word or two about the company itself in a minute. My name is Tomasz Wołek. I'm a domain architect for manufacturing. You may probably have heard about solution architects, what domain architect is. Basically, my field of accountability is much bigger than one solution. So I take accountability of all solutions related to one business area. In my case, it's everything what is related to supporting production process in our factories all over the world. I don't remember the exact number today, but I think that we are beyond 40 factories today.
My name is Paweł Płaszczyca. I work in the same team as Tomasz. So I'm platform architect, solution platform architect in PMI, in area of industrial IoT. So it's an area where we enable communication with our manufacturing equipment. We provide a global platform for that purpose. So anything related to communication with manufacturing equipment is made.
as I said, today we will be talking about cool stuff because, at least in my opinion, even today's architecture is a cool thing. For that purpose, Paweł built a POC for the time being based on a node-code solution coming from AWS. But what's interesting in this architecture is it's not a very standard approach, even for AWS themselves. It's surprising that it was done like that. Before we jump into the technical details, which we are probably waiting for, we have a short intro about who we are. We are a global tobacco company. As I mentioned, we have factories all over the world. Currently, we are on a journey towards a smoke-free future. So we are trying to deliver our products with minimize less impact for the users and customers. And all this journey would not be possible with a lot of support from our research centers, our innovation centers, and our IT hubs. We have a couple of IT hubs globally. One of them is placed in Kraków. In our IT hub, we have over 300 or 400 now employees. Overall, our company hires above, I think it's over 80,000 people. And our IT hub is divided into many departments. Some of them are really strictly oriented to technology, on infrastructure, cloud services, AI, big data, and so on. Some of them, they are oriented on functional platforms. Finance, PNC, manufacturing, product, life sciences, so on and so forth. I recommend taking a look because we have some hirings which are open. It's really innovative and cool environment to work. When I was preparing for this presentation, I was thinking how to tell you what's the main challenge, because we as solution architects, we tend to think about what before we start to think about how, and also sometimes we think about why. I found very interesting academic definitions, what is the master data, what is strategic value of data in a business process, but I will not bother you with that. These are like academic definitions of the things, but I wanted to find some understandable, easy to digest analogy. So I thought about a bookstore. So if you run a bookstore, you have a couple types of data which you are working on. One type of data, this is not exhaustive list, of course. One type of data is master data. So you can compare it to like a detailed catalog of all the books. And it includes information such as title, author, sometimes this unique number which is called ISBN, which identifies a specific book. This data is relatively stable because the book is written and it exists and it's not changing unless there's some revision or some new addition. And then we have a reference data, which is used to classify the books. Like a big store, we need to put some shelves, some labels on it so people can find something which is relevant for them. And then we have transactional data. So all the data, like records, which books are being sold, to which customers, can contain information about who bought the book, when it was purchased, what was the price, and so on and so forth. And this is transactional data, which is changing quite often. It's quite dynamic. These definitions will be important in a minute. So, what kinds of master data? Because today we'll be talking about applying this event-based architecture in master data area. This list is also non-exhaustive, so I wanted to give you a couple examples what they can be. So you can have customer master data, which I mentioned before. So name, address, contact details, purchase history. You can have vendor master data, so about suppliers, some tax information, payment terms, and so on. You can have product master data, which I just mentioned about the books, characteristics, descriptions, specifications, pricing.
And I mean, there are many other types of this master data, which are relevant for the area which we come from. So which are relevant for manufacturing. Definitely the product one, where we define the product itself, which will be made in the factory. Manufacturing equipment has a lot of features, and characteristics which are master data. Machine types, storage buffer types, material loading points. We have machinery to put something in, to get something out. This master data helps to track the changes also in changes in the equipment, right? Where they are placed, the versions, because they're also versions. They help to plan the long-term capacity and plan to move the equipment across the factory or across the factories. Other type of master data which is relevant for manufacturing is facility-oriented. So information about the structure of the building, the factory, but also the structure of factories, because we can have regions, you have codes for the factories and so on. Then when you get inside, you get building codes, business areas, room numbers, specific functions, production areas, because there are different production areas for different processes. Where do we use this master data? Why is it so important to identify? Why is it so special? First of all, this is a critical asset to do the production and maintenance planning, because you need to know what are the schedules per machine type. And as I mentioned, machine type is one of the type of master data. You can do the production planning, because you know the performance metrics of each equipment, right? Then it's also relevant in a production execution, because the production order is issued with a bill of materials, which is relevant per product type and per work center. Work center is a machine or set of machines which has a specific input and output. And at the end, we have all the things related to analytics and business intelligence for the report. Because without master data context, it's meaningless. We have a really good example. We managed to get a screenshot of one of our BI reports. And as you see, you can have different sections, right? And they have different context. If you look at the top line on the left, you have consumption of electricity for some manufacturing equipment. It is divided by weight, and there is some number in kilowatts. But it will not give you any insight without, first of all, what the data is relevant for. So the base. Base is like a piece of a factory floor which can contain multiple production lines. But it will not be relevant for anyone if you then look at the diagram which is below it, which shows the number of link-ups of production lines which are inside this base. So without the context of master data, you get some information, but you will not get any insight. I think that's really relevant for the whole story. Also wanted to mention a couple of topics of themes related to complexity and challenges on managing the master data. The most common issues, the ones which we are also facing, is that this type of data is often siloed. It means it is contained in some systems which are not synced between each other. Often they are duplicated, so people try to export something from one system, import it to another. This gets messy, it's often outdated. The data quality is sometimes really low because of another challenge which is related to the governance, so how this master data is managed. Way to solve it is, this is something that we also try to take in our companies, to centralize the process of managing this type of data, and to do it consistently across the whole enterprise. Of course, the easiest way to do that is to put a central global system, which is not that easy, and we also tell you about a couple challenges related to that, why it is not so easy. And of course, it simplifies the whole story because if you have a centralized process, then it's easier to enforce them. There is one topic which is not straightforward, so sometimes centralizing the data management also leads to centralizing the data storage, which is not always a good thing. But it happens. One of the biggest challenges which we are facing in manufacturing is that we have a class of systems. I know that we are on a meeting about cloud services, but we have a class of systems which need to remain on-premise due to some valid business needs like high resiliency or low latency. So our business needs the system to always run and close to the factory floor, no matter the connectivity to the cloud and to the internet. And I think I'll pass the control to Paweł.
Thanks, Tomasz. So in the next part of the presentation, what I will try to do is to walk you through the architecture process, which is focusing on distributing this master data, right? So, and how we ended up with something that we find quite cool and, let's say, quite easy to establish with AWS services. So, referring to what Tomasz just said, yeah? So maybe what we can see first. Yeah? I think first we can see that I'm not an artist, so sorry for that. But what we can see is that, as Tomasz was saying, we have these centralized processes where we want to manage the master data same way for all the factories. So in PMI, for example, we have like 30 plus factories globally on nearly all continents, and we want to have a single place where people are managing this structure, this factory structure, list of our manufacturing equipment, and so on, centrally. Yeah? So we have a central system. Where do we manage this? Now, also as Tomasz was mentioning, we have systems which will be using this data. So it can be manufacturing execution system, it can be manufacturing planning, process supervision, it can be many systems. They are in the factory, so I name them local systems. And in each factory, we have a couple of those. So if you multiply 30 times, a couple of times, you'll end up with hundreds of systems which are local. And then we have also global systems. So what can be, I think Tomasz was showing the BI report. So it can be our data warehouse where we are centralizing this data. It can be a different system where we, for example, unify or centralize the process of onboarding some machines and so on. So it can be various systems which are in the cloud, which are global, but also many systems which are local. Now what I wanted to show is that usually what we are doing, we are exposing this data from the central system so other systems can consume it. So this is what I meant by these arrows, that they are from the systems consuming to the system in the, which owns the data or manages the data. So they ask for this data and try to get it. Such approach, yeah, we can expose it with APIs or other way, but what it creates quite coupled architecture. Yeah? So these all systems are relying on the central one. So it puts quite high availability or capacity requirements on this system. Yeah? And it is also one thing which is important. It is quite difficult to replace it. Yeah? So if we want to change the system to something different, of course we can have an API contract, we can have different stuff, but still it's quite difficult to replace it. And maybe one more thing, it needs to scale, so this system needs to be aware how many other systems are bringing this data. It needs to scale with the amount of systems growing. So we wanted to find, let's say, first the solution of how to change this into something that scales better and makes the architecture more decoupled. So quite famous pattern, and yeah, as in the name of the presentation, is the event-based integration. So what we can see here, we have a system which is able to publish the event. So whenever the master data changes, so we have a new work center, new production manufacturer, new vendor, new type of machine, we can just simply publish this as the event to the broker. Now, we can even not know who exactly is interested in this data. There can be like some amount of systems who are interested in this data. This amount can change, and that does not impact the source system. Yeah? So we can scale better. We can also quite easily replace this source system, right? Because if we persist the same structure of topics, if we persist the same structure of the payload that we are sending to the broker, actually it can be any other source system sending the same data to these target systems, right? So this was the first decision in the architecture. And there is something that we wanted also to share a bit, the technology choice, because it is important in later slides that we also were working under some constraints. Yeah? So we were not like freely choosing the technology everywhere, but there are some constraints we want to just explain. I will give first to Tomasz.
Let's switch to the next slide. So, if you are a relatively small company, it's really easy to make technology choices. Because your landscape is small, then you can make your choice by meditating, drawing straws, rolling a dice, going to some inhabited island and then thinking about it. But as I mentioned, we have like 30 plus, I think over 40 now factories. And altogether our enterprise landscape is really big. So at some point in time you start to think how to get better TCO, how to get better manageability of what you do as IT. And you start to think about governance. And so architecture is the beginning of the governance. So to make any good choices, either at the beginning, probably you can improvise, you can create a community, you can ask around, you can talk with different people. But as the landscape grows, it starts to get more and more complicated. So our company decided at some point to introduce architecture governance and to set some rules and principles, basically, how to do the architecture. I mentioned all of them, but just to highlight what we focused, and you can use them freely. I mean, in theory, you should or could comply to all of them. But in specific cases, some of them become more relevant. And our case was, the case that Paweł is describing, is really focused on 2 points from this principle list. First one, which is about opening up access, so to making data available for anyone who needs it. And the second principle, which was really important for us, to reuse. So if there is a technology in our landscape, which is possible to deliver what we need to do, we should reuse it, other than to find another one, alternative, and so on and so forth. Of course, there are other principles like learning from mistakes or following the cloud first as a rule for achieving the massive scalability and availability. Just wanted to highlight this before we move to the next step, which will be why we have chosen some specific technology solution.
All right. So in the next slide, you can already see that in order to follow the reuse principle, we had chosen, we had to use Solus. Solus is a PubSub platform. If you are familiar with Kafka, it is a bit like this kind of performance that it can satisfy. It is different from many angles, like the way it handles messages and the way it scales, but we can think about it like message broker similar to Kafka. So just to say a few words, it supports multiple protocols. So we have some freedom of choice of MQTT and AMQP, or like 10 plus different SDKs for different programming languages. So from that we could see, all right, so it should be fairly straightforward for the systems which are targeted to consume the data. They have like freedom of choice of the protocol or the programming language they could consume it. But the question arises how to publish. Yeah? So we still have a system which is maybe enabled with the API, but it still needs to publish events, and it was not created for that purpose before. So I think the most obvious answer would be, right, so let's create a component which will react to the change of the data in this system, and it will publish the event to the message broker, right? So, of course, this is quite obvious, but it has an assumption that we have a person or the developer who can do that. Yeah? So we need to develop some custom code using these SDKs to do that. And it is also a second assumption that we really want to invest in this particular system. So we think this system will stay for a longer while as a system where we manage this master data. But what if both of these assumptions are really wrong? Yeah? What if we have like a situation where we have this system which is currently adopted and it is being used? So we can say the process is working for the management of the data, but we don't really have possibility to invest much and we don't have resources to develop this. Yeah? So saying in other words, can we avoid development? Can we maybe do some no-code integration to publish these events? And yeah, so there is a mechanism which is called CDC or change data capture. Did anybody use this change data capture? Okay, somebody. But okay, not so many people, so I will introduce. CDC, it is the mechanism which is embedded or can be enabled in various databases. So on the database level, you can track changes happening. So it can be changes of the database structure or changes of the data, so DML or PL operations. Various databases implemented different way. For example, we were using in this particular system PostgreSQL. So what PostgreSQL is doing is adding changes to the write-ahead log, and for example, you can use it to replicate the database. So you can create replicas using this change data capture mechanism. In RDS for PostgreSQL, in general in RDS, it is very easy to enable this mechanism. It's just a parameter when you provision the service. So that's coding involved. And what we get from that already is that we kind of have events, or we can subject to events of changing of the data on the database level. So now remains like a question, okay, how do we get these events which are still in the database, in this write-ahead log, to publish them to source? So that's a first step. So again, there are options. I just wanted to mention that. It's not something that we were looking for, but there are libraries like WAL to JSON, which make it super easy to develop a code, which you can, for example, use in Lambda to decode the changes from the database and move them to JSON, so you can easily publish them also using the SDKs to the developer of choice. It is worth mentioning in our particular case because, for example, if we think about master data, the amount of changes is fairly low, so it is not frequently changing data. So in such cases, Lambda cost, which will be probably also very low, and we don't need to invest much money to enable it. But still, we were not looking for a approach where we again need to code, so that is just to share the option with you. Yeah, and here is where we ended, actually. So we were looking again for a solution which involves no coding and which will deliver changes from this database to the broker. And we ended up with having 3 components which will enable that. So the first component is the DMS, or Database Migration Service. As the name suggests, it is mainly for migrating or synchronizing of the data. But what it can do, actually, it can also continuously decode changes from CDC and publish them to the target endpoint. There are various endpoints supported by the DMS. And one of these endpoints is Kinesis. So what we can do, we can read all the changes happening here and publish them as an event. So we already kind of say, we have the event created based on the change of the database. So what we get also from DMS, we don't need to manage it. It's a managed service, of course. It can be scaled to the size we need. Even the serverless option is there. There is one disclaimer, maybe in our environment quite important. The serverless version requires the PC endpoints if you want to transfer the data to your private network, but that's like one of the options that you can follow. Yeah, there is a monitoring error handling built in, so we get a lot of features for free. We don't need to code it, which we would have to do if we use Lambda, for example, in the previous step. Yeah, and what Kinesis gives us, for example, gives us some prevention of the data. So even if we cannot deliver these to the target, for some reason the next component cannot read the data, or the broker is for some reason unavailable because of maintenance or whatever case, we still can persist the data in the Kinesis, and we have some retention for this data. And the next great thing is that Solas has a connector out of the box, which we didn't have to create, which can read from Kinesis stream and delivers events to the broker. So that way, without any coding, with mainly use of database migration service, we could generate events which are triggered when the master data changes. Another cool thing is that on this system, which I was already saying, we probably don't see it as a target. We manage way more than this master data. This was just one of the systems where we started to manage this master data because we needed it for different purposes, but we also envisioned that it will be changed. So there is also a lot of other data which we don't really want to publish as an event. We don't really want to have such a big stream of events. And what DMS can give us is a quite nice rules engine. So we can say we are interested only in the data changes in these particular tables. So only for these tables we will generate the data to the output, which is in our case Kinesis stream. Here is just an example of what we can see. It is a message already collected from the broker. So we can see the data which was published. So we can have like all the fields from the record. I think we can also configure the columns which we are interested in. And the very useful thing, which is the metadata. So we can see the type of the operation and the type of the record. So for example, type of the record can be data or can be change of the database. So we can also track changes of the database with this mechanism. So the DDR, so DML operations. And operation is also very useful because if we are only interested in inserts or updates, we can leave it to just that. We can also receive, for example, operations like load, which we may just skip and just decide we don't know. Or we can actually use it, yes, because for reconciliation of the data, like resending periodically all the data from the source to the targets, just in case there is a new system or there is some need for that, we can trigger DMS to resend all the data and this operation will be loaded. Yeah. All right. Just to mention, because again we were working on the, let's say, constraint. Yeah, we had some constraints to follow with Solas. But if we didn't have it, yeah, another option to implement almost exactly same architecture is to use Kafka. Yeah? So DMS can also produce events in Kafka, and in AWS you can use the managed Kafka. So in that way, without using Solas as a technology, you can as well produce events and deliver them to target systems. And also what we had on Kinesis with the data retention, obviously Kafka even gives us more possibilities to retain the data. Yeah, just one thing to mention. There are also alternatives, of course, in the market, like Division is, I think, quite well-known software for handling CDC changes and using CDC to produce events or replicate the data. The benefit of having DMS here is that it is a managed solution. So again, if we don't want to invest much, if we want to just maybe try it, avoiding managing additional components is a benefit. So with DMS. Yeah, I think just to maybe summarize.
We are almost there. So to summarize, what Paweł was showing is the situation when you have a system which is not ready to adopt event-based architecture or event-based approach, and how to use a service from AWS which was probably not designed to do that, to track the changes in the database, to enable event-based approach. I think it's pretty interesting, and we actually had a meeting with colleagues from AWS, and they were a bit surprised that we are using like that, but there is nothing wrong with it, so it's fine. As the last point of the presentation, I just wanted to say that there are no silver bullets. So there is nothing like a perfect architecture. All the architecture types have some pros and cons. Of course, event based is cool because it's real-time processing. It's when you use the broker, it's scalable. With the computer systems, it's really nice thing. But it comes with a price. So you increase the complexity, you may face the problems related to latency issues. There are some challenges regarding the maintenance and monitoring of real-time brokers. And sometimes when things get complicated and when you go on scale, you may face some data consistency problems, which we actually had some examples with a bit different event broker, which we also use. But when you start to scale up the broker and create like a clusters, data consistency can become a challenge. So that's, I think, wrap up. So
yeah. I think we are happy to take some questions.
yeah.
Let's try to. Oh, yeah.
So first.
So I've got two questions. The first one is why you choose the source exactly, and at what stage does the selection of data which comes to stream, like this selection that you said that you are choosing some data to come to stream and other data not to come. So where does it happen? So the question.
Okay. So SOLAS selection, there is a longer story behind. SOLAS is offered by SOLAS, and SOLAS is offered by SAP, so SAP Advanced Bench. Two offerings for the same product. We are actually using the second one. We are a quite big customer of SAP, as you can imagine, and that was one of the reasons that the support behind. Yes, so we have a really good support for SOLAS. Like another is, I think, the ability to use various protocols. Yeah, so that was one of the important aspects. So if you, for example, compare Kafka with SOLAS, in Kafka you kind of have to upfront define the partitions and topics, and you need to be quite strict in terms of scalability. In SOLAS, we don't need to do that. It kind of automatically creates, let's say, understand how to store the data. You don't need to manually configure it to the scale that you need. There is one also very big important point. So in companies like ours, which is global, you very often need to, let's say, collect the data from various parts of, let's say, like from various factories. And SOLAS offers something which is called intelligent message routing, or dynamic message routing, DMR, which allows you to create an event mesh without configuring like which bridge goes where. Yes? So that it can dynamically understand, let's say, route tables or like subscribers on the broker and route the message. So there were a couple of decisions behind. So it's for the second question, so if you want, it is possible to configure CDC, like create a replication slot, logical replication on the database, and you can already there decide which data should be added to the replication slot. It has a lot of benefits because you avoid adding too much data to the slot, and if you have a lot of frequently changing data, it can actually impact performance and resource utilization. So it is a good choice actually to do it at the database level already. But if you cannot, you can also enable it for the overall database to track all the changes, and you can do it on the DLS. I think the first one is better, especially if you have a lot of data changes.
Right. Thank you.
I have a question, like out of curiosity. What is the target, like after the kinesis, where it landed? So you had an open database, or like how the target is like?
So just going back to this, yeah. So we have target systems which are consuming the events. Yeah. So sorry, even before. So depending on the system which you have. So I was mentioning. So these global systems can be Redshift, for example, collecting this. It could even connect it earlier, but it can be a central, let's say, reporting system, like PA system, which collects it. It can be local manufacturing execution system with on-prem database, which collects. So it's like a, let's say, variety of systems which can collaborate.
Our landscape is a mix of legacy and modern cloud solutions. So we also had to take it into account, and it was also related also relevant in the technology selection process. So we had to find a system which will be able to connect or provide the data to any type of technology, old, new, and so on. So it can be anything, basically. Of course, depending on the technology maturity level, the system can either plug in directly to SONAS, or we will need to use something in between.
Any additional questions? All right.
Yeah. You showed the solution for subscribing data, which is changing data, right? But initially, target systems somehow lost this data before receiving these changes.
Yeah, so
the solution to use this solution for initial data.
yes. So with DMS, it is possible to say, let's load all the data again, and then there will be events. So DMS works in two modes, let's say, yeah? One is load, and one is continuous replication. With the load, what it does, it gets all the data from the database, and it sends to the target, yeah? So in our case, target can be Kinesis. You can even decide this is not too much data, to periodically or on demand, resend this data. You can easily filter this data on the targets, because the operation, I was showing this here, this operation, which we have here, the insert, it will show load. So only if you are interested in the full load, you will listen to the events which have operation load. In other cases, if you are not interested in having like the full load, you will only limit to listening creates, updates, also insert, update, delete. That's one way. Alternative way is simply to do the initial load with another like migration ETL process, or like call the API of the system to get the initial version, and then track only the recognition using changes. I think we have both actually.
Sorry, I will be please.
So this is not the standard use.
This
is not the standard use of DMS. So how is it cost-wise?
Cost-wise.
Does it make sense to use it this way? Or,
yeah.
Does it cost less than it should, or more than it should, because you use it in a standard way?
Yeah. So good question. We observe like it's not much changes, but it's like we can say hundreds per week, yeah? Because it's really master data changing with low frequency. For the DMS, then provision instance with two instances, like I think they are pretty small or something, and the Kinesis, this is I think $100 per month. So it's like for the other company, it's really small amount. You could go lower with Lambda, probably, yeah, for such an amount of data. But yeah, it is really for high amount of data. Yeah, Kinesis can go really high, yeah, but for low, it's really.
There was some question about DMS, because it's like key component for you, and are you sure to work as a test next releases?
I'm sorry,
Question about DMS. So like one of it's your main component, are you sure it will work as a test next releases?
No, we are just users as PMI of this. I don't know, but I can see like there are these two target endpoints, Kinesis and Kafka. I don't know if we can foresee that it will not be supported.
I have no idea. Don't look at me.
I don't know.
So I'm just delivering pizza to you.
I hope it will.
But the good news is that, as I said, this design was validated with AWS. So they didn't say, guys, but you should watch out because we will decommission this functionality in upcoming versions. So probably.
And they are focused on deep race.
Not anytime soon.
Yeah, I have a question. CDC is UMass, it's really cool, but you mentioned that you specified some tables to be executed like separate tasks, I understand, yeah. But did you get something like dependencies between tables? And some data consistency being broken, for example, some execution task failed. How is this resolved?
Okay, so that is a configuration of a single task. Yeah? Like in a single migration task or like replication task, you can configure it. So what you always get is this monitoring. So you have a possibility to see if it failed. Yeah. Obviously, with CDC, you can move the cursor also if it is needed. That's kind of more manual intervention. But you do that to start replicating from the time where you wanted to look back. You always have like there is the option to resend. Yeah, that's I think like quite a lot to resend, but yeah, I think you can react to that.
Just think about if you have something like at the end, something like business logic to verify the dependency is satisfied.
So I think I get you. So the question is, you have some change, and the change failed, right? And it's more like a Terraform that you can come back, or it's more like a batch that you did it, and everything after that failed needs to run. Right? So it's.
No, I think it's like per record, honestly. Yeah. So if for some reason some change was not successfully published, yeah, so it's like a single change that you miss. Of course, I think this was Tomasz mentioned. Like this can lead to some data inconsistencies, but then I think the DMS is coming exactly this like the roles like if you need them. Yeah, like.
Any other questions? I'll remind you we have. Gadgets from Philip Morris International Gadget. You can get him for 2 weeks, but no worries. For people who ask the most questions, we do the most active.
I think everybody asked one.
Yeah,
we asked 2 questions, but I think that we
Well, anybody wants to ask some questions?
No, it's the competition.
It's not like, like nasty questions. On the end, let's ask some nasty questions. I have one question though. Can I ask one question?
Do you want to talk about that?
No, I will not. But I want you to show to encourage. Because it didn't happen for you that you had such a situation that you get those streams, you get all of those data in a distributed system, and after that pump it into one legacy system that it was just simply DDoS. It can happen like that.
With the amount of the events which we have for the master data, it's very unlikely. Because as Paweł was mentioning, it's not tens of thousands of events, it's a couple hundred events a week.
All right, okay, gotcha.
A month.
Gotcha.
So it's a really, it's
like a no-go scenario for now.
No. And I think that you could still do the throttling on the broker.
All right.
You can set some rules how many messages per second the target can accept. So you can easily introduce some, prevention for the DDoS-like situation.
Okay. Questions? No questions? Oh, one question. Cool. Nice. Go for it.
Maybe not.
For a backpack or what? No, the real one.
Maybe not connected with the speed, but you mentioned you use this migration service. Yeah? As far as I remember, you actually allow this service to rise of the database which is migrated.
Yes.
How do you deal with this? Because of course, you can leave data and tables, but basically, this service needs full access to the database. This database could possibly contain data which maybe they are not prohibited, but you are prohibited from publishing this.
You are for security, right?
No,
just asking. You're asking for a friend.
So in our case, like the out for the database is simply user password. So you are right. You need to have a user from the database and the endpoint user password is the authentication. But when you configure the replication, you create a replication software.
Yes, but I'm using from the, for example, from the PCI database. Yeah, you are obligated to do some process somewhere. Yeah, and you are not allowed to go. Anyway, if you got a password or not, there should be no connection, for example, to databases or things. Yeah. For example, you are not allowed to store data. For example, you've got a card. Yeah. You are not allowed to store a card folder, and the one you are not allowed to any point in the system. Those
I think the DMS will help you with that part. There's I think no way to use this as a compliance for the data. So I can figure it out.
Any other less security questions? I'm just kidding, you know.
That was nasty question.
That was nasty, actually. He will get a backpack. Guys, any questions here? All right. Thank you very much. If you want to connect with you guys, don't hesitate. These QR codes are safe. It was for you. They're safe. Don't worry. So the backpacks for activity, I always like to give them, you can agree or not. You can agree or not. Thank you for the please. For encouragement. Thank you very much. You will get it. You'll get it. And
There's only one person to ask 2 questions.
Kto zadał?
Tak?
Ten na pewno? Dobra. Jeżeli nie, mogli rycerze. Ten, prawda? Nie. Listen, guys, we have the questions. There was a survey. Do we have the winners? Hey, nobody answered properly. Yeah, 5 vouchers we have. Nobody, nobody, like get all the points. Come on, I'm just kidding. It's plenty of it. So I will read the front of the email, and the rest it's in your imagination. So it's, come on, so many, like a and S. I will try. Okay. There's 7 either. So why? No, not today. We'll send you over email. Jotstajnowski. You again. Mr. Tesowa. Oh, perfect. And Hamed. Okay, Hamed. I think it's one Hamed here, if it's possible. All right, okay. And Mateusz. And the surname, it's the surname is your domain. Yeah, that's you. Okay, good. So we have our 5 vouchers, remember, that are for AWS, not Amazon, so don't complain after you get them and try to buy socks or pillow with the Nicolas Cage. Okay, so don't complain about that. Thank you very much for you guys. Wojtek, Wojtek, thank you very much for the presentation. Maria for perfect organization, and I'd like to thank for you guys that you joined us at this lovely, modern place. Maybe next time we'll came here, but we'll see. There is one more meeting in this year. Yeah. We will organize it somewhere after the event, probably. Yeah. Just to be sure that we will get a little bit of recap from it. And thank you very much. One more thing. Okay, the gate is closed, so we need to stay till tomorrow. There's the rest of the pizza and there's no booze, so just eat the same way. Don't hesitate. When you're ready, you can